Caprice number 4 is deceptively difficult. Just as I was playing through it now, my left hand was getting incredibly tight, especially in the left hand thumb, and that's something that is very important to talk about. So when you slow this down for intonation, and you try to tune all those double stops and chords, I would pay particular attention to the relaxation of the thumb. In fact, when I was reworking this, I was constantly reminding myself to relax the thumb. So for example, if I were to practice the first few measures, for every double stop, I'd find it, but I'd also keep telling myself to relax the thumb here. Relax the thumb. Relaxing the thumb. Relaxing. What this does is it teaches you to be able to relax the thumb without consciously telling yourself when you're running through it. So it becomes part of the muscle memory. So you don't have to tell your body to do it while you're playing it at tempo. It just kind of happens naturally. Well, at least that's the goal. There were certain passages just now when I ran through the whole thing where my thumb got incredibly tight, but I think that's just part of this particular caprice, because it's just all double stops and chords. It's kind of ridiculous in that sense, and it sounds much easier than it is to play. Most people won't really realize how difficult this caprice is, especially for pitch. Anyway, that being said, there are two possible ways to approach this particular caprice, and the first is to use the entire bow alternating the short notes between the frog and the tip, and that would sound like this. You can just play entirely in the lower half of the bow, which I kind of prefer because it's more elegant and it better matches the atmosphere of the piece. It's up to you. I would actually practice it both ways. Using the entire bow is a great exercise for the bow arm and for building strength in the upper arm, the upper part of the bow, sorry. And so yeah, master it both ways and then decide which way you want to play it. I would also practice just the melody itself so that you're aware of how you'd like to phrase it. So, for example, and then once you add the chord, it's so much easier to phrase it. Also, realize how I'm distributing the bow when I do that. When I get to the peaks of the phrases, I'm using much more bow and less bow in those other moments, coming out of those peaks. The chord breaking is something that's worth talking about because this caprice kind of has an inherent Baroque character, and an important part of Baroque playing is variety when it comes to chord breaking. So I would apply that same notion to this caprice. So if I were to just use the first chord as an example, I wouldn't play it in all these different ways, but just using that particular chord, you could just break it 2 and 2, which is kind of boring, but you could do that. Or you could linger on the bottom. Or you could do some kind of a roll, or something in between. And you can apply that principle to all the various chords throughout this work, and hopefully when I ran through it, you heard some of the various approaches that I applied. That can be a great device for your bow arm, especially learning how to navigate the string crossing just in the hand and not using too much excessive motion. But be sure that your elbow is at the correct height. If your elbow is too low, you're not going to be able to catch the high strings. So your elbow needs to be at a good angle, and you need to figure out this motion in the hand. You should literally be able to just break a chord in the hand. Obviously the elbow helps, but that's something to think about when you practice this caprice. The second section is marked poco meno, so it should be a little slower, a little more relaxed, I think, in character. But more importantly, it needs to be very smooth and legato, and a complete contrast to the disjointed nature of the outer sections. I mean, these outer sections are just so inherently angular that it's important to approach this middle section with a different kind of sound quality, and I'll show you what I mean. That's just one way you could shape it, but as you may have heard, I was using a much lighter bow and a much smoother bow, a sweeter kind of tone color. So think about that in this section. The last thing that I have marked to talk about is the voicing in the part where he's jumping between registers. Here I would practice it by playing the different voices with a different kind of approach to the sound. So maybe the bass voice you can emphasize more, and you can float more on the top voice. That would sound like this. You could do it the other way around, floating on the bottom and more emphatic on the top. Whatever you decide, I think it's important to distinguish between those two voices. I think that about covers it. Be sure when the A section returns that you capture the more dignified, majestic quality right away. And I think that about covers it. So if you have any additional questions, then feel free to make some notes in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you found this video helpful, and tune in for Piatti Caprice number 5 in the near future.